It's a beautiful morning and Wade is returning from a long run. In a bit, he heads home for breakfast and his wife informs him that she needs some money for her wedding gown and she's scared to ask this of him because they're kinda tight on cash. Kissing his wife, Wade informs her that it's okay and he only wants to see his wife happy. And next we see Wade paying his employees' salaries. And later that day, he gets a letter and informs his wife that he got the business loan. And in bed, she tells him that she's very proud of him. And late at night, Wade and his wife wake up to some sounds. Picking up a baseball bat, he tells his wife to go get Mickey, and after making sure his wife and son are in the room, he leaves to check who the intruder was. And upon realizing that someone has found him, the intruder runs out of the house, and Wade follows him. And Wade hits him to make him stop, but he accidentally ends up killing him. And moments later, the police come inside and inform them that they could not confirm that it was self-defense because the guy was outside of the house and was not armed. And Wade informs him that it was an accident, but the officer states that he's arrested for murder. And Laura argues that it cannot be murder as the intruder was in her son's room, but there was no point in her saying that because they don't listen to her. And Wade is taken to prison and he undergoes the whole checking procedure and gets his fingerprints taken and he's finally in the system. And after taking a shower, they were all given their uniforms and placed in a room. And Wade ends up getting beaten up by a man and then he's taken out of his cell and placed in another cell with a bunch of bulky men. And one day later, Laura comes to visit him and she tells him that she's staying with her son at her mother's place. And she's doing that because she doesn't really feel safe at their house anymore. And he tells her that he's getting a public defender and that they have to wait and see what happens. And Mara Reed, his defender, meets him and asks if he has something close to $1 million. But he informs her no, and she tells him that she's gonna do her best to help him. I mean, if you get a public defender, that means you can't afford a lawyer. I mean, if you have $1 million, just get an actual lawyer. Okay? I'm not saying that public defenders are not actual lawyers, but hey, just saying. And prisoners were going pretty crazy in San Quentin State Prison and burning things and screaming. And police try to calm things down by throwing tear gas at them. And Officer Gordon comes to interrogate John for stirring up the prisoners, and locked up in his cell, he tells him that his Maria could have been 27 yesterday. And Gordon tells him to stop living in the past, and he tells him that he is in the past. And Gordon informs him that he is going to be transferred so he can start fresh there. And Mara informs Wade that he will serve 3 years for manslaughter with the accountability for 97 days already served. And the next day, Laura and his son are sitting in the courtroom while he accepts to be sent to the state prison to serve his 3 years. And on their way to prison, Jake introduces Danny Sampson as the strongest man in prison to Wade. Bill drops off his son at school, and upon reaching the school's premises, Todd hides because there's a girl in school who wants to fight him, and he doesn't want to because it's a girl. And hugging his child, Bill drives off. And on the bus, Danny, along with the help of the other prisoners, stabs one prisoner to death. And pushing his tiny blade on Jake, Danny sits back as though nothing happened. And Officer Bill asks the team to take the beaten prisoner to the infirmary and throw the rest in the hole. And Wade finds the blade in his hands, and the police take him to a cell alone. And Wade cries and calls out so he can get out of the cell. The next day, Wade is interrogated by the police and they tell him that they know he didn't do it, but if he tells them who did it, things will be easier for him. If the man that was stabbed dies, he will be imprisoned for associated murder. And Bill informs him that Danny will not protect him the way he thinks, but he denies that he's seen anything and he's taken to another cell. And after he's inside and cuffed, they tell him that he can have 3 showers a week, and that's it. And next we see Bill interviewing a new officer for the SHU. Officer Gordon asks Bill what's on his mind, and Bill informs him that they're transferring John Smith and that he's planning to put him in protective custody. Gordon tells him that he needs him to be with everyone in the SHU, and they come to an agreement that they're not isolating him and making his life a lot simpler for him. And later in the evening, Wade is called out for yard time, and the guard asks him to remove his clothes and show him each part of his body where he could potentially be hiding some kind of blade. And after this procedure, they let him go out and join the rest of the prisoners on the yard. A few moments later, everyone starts to wrestle and the police bet on who will win. Bill then shoots at them, and he calls out one of the prisoners that lost the wrestling to the room. And once he got him alone, he beats him and he sends him to his cell for the rest of the prisoners to see. And later that day, Laura comes to visit with a package but is told that the SHU prisoners cannot accept packages yet. And leaving the package at the checkpoint, Laura goes through the security scan, and when they detect a metal object on her bra, she is told to get undressed and get checked. And meeting with Wade, she asks what he's done to be put in a security cell, and Wade just asks her to trust him. And crying, Laura informs him that they're running out of money and that she's trying to find a job as their mortgage is due. And feeling heartbroken that they're going through that, he asks her to use the money from his business. And later that day, Wade is sitting in his cell when they get John Smith to join him. And Bill threatens John about his letter on the internet before closing the door on them. And once the door was closed, he tells Wade that they will be on good terms if he does what he said. The next morning, Wade and John are called out of yard time, and John clicks with the other prisoners, which disappoints Bill and his team. And at night, John and Wade talk about their families, and as Wade's curiosity grows, John makes a deal with him that if he stays away from the yard, he will give him the rules of the prison. And he tells him that it's all about race, with Hispanics being cut in half, and Northerners and Southerners at war, and blacks being in gangs, and white people making you do things for them for a favor. The next morning in the yard, Jake tells Wade to fight some guy and he gets jumped. Bill, on the other side, asks the new officer to shoot the guy that's losing in the legs, and when he finds him hesitating, he shoots him himself. And Bill yells at the new officer, and he tells him that this is how he teaches them a lesson, and if he doesn't do what he's told, he'll be transferred. And sitting inside his cell, John informs him how twisted this place is. And after 231 days, Officer Gordon and Bill were having a conversation, and they were talking about the SHU, and Bill tells him that everything is under control. And Laura and Mickey come to visit Wade in prison, and as Wade comes out with a different demeanor, looking very bold and talking differently, Laura doesn't seem to like the type of person that he's become. And after he tells her to leave it alone, she tells him how their financial situation is getting worse. And Wade tells her to sell the house and whatever they can find and fix their situation. And looking very concerned, Sarah asks him what he does to be protected, and he dismisses her question. And apparently, Wade is fighting off a bunch of people to stay protected by the Aryan Brother Nation, and he does this on a daily basis. And as the days pass, Wade gets fed up with fighting random people, so he says no to the fighting, and the Aryan brothers go against him. And when things get pretty intense, the police do the whole tear gassing again and try to bring the prisoners under control. And Laura, who was at her mom's place, checks her bills, and her mom informs her that they can stay there as long as they want to. And later that day, James and his pregnant wife were shopping when they meet Bill, and he tells them that they're like a family and that he's ready to help them. And in the yard, Danny calls Wade and tells him that if he's gonna survive, he has to stick with them. Danny tells Jake that he saw him hide the blade in Wade's hand, and then he cuts him on his face. And later that day, John explains his tattoos to Wade. He tells him not to give Danny any reasons to leave him behind if he's going to survive the rest of his stay in prison. And on the next day, Bill and his colleague, who are sitting in the yard cheering for Todd, have a conversation, and Bill tells him that he doesn't want to play by the rules anymore. To be the highest paid cop there, things are gonna have to continue that way. And then we see Wade waking up from a bad dream of the day he killed the intruder. He tells John that he shouldn't have killed him, but he reassures him saying that he had to protect his family and it was something that had to be done. And Wade asks John why he killed the other 7 guys instead of the 2 men. And he tells him that he had to kill the other 7 guys to take revenge for his wife and daughter's death. He also tells him that he wanted the death penalty, but he couldn't have it. And when Laura visits her husband again, she tells him that she's struggling to survive without him, and running away from pity was getting a lot harder. And in the yard, he gets into more fights even though he's done with this kind of stuff, but he still does what he's told because he wants to survive. And Bill bribes Jake to put him in a protective cell if he tells him the truth. And in the infirmary, he tortures Wade for not telling him the truth, and he leaves him tied up on a bed. And in the courts, Wade is sentenced to 3 more years for being accused of murder, and after Bill's testimony, the judge added 3 more years, which adds up to 6 in total. And Laura's mother starts scolding her own daughter for being a single mother at the age of 33. And in his cell, Wade cries in pain and anger after reading the letter that Laura sent him. And after this, Wade starts fighting like a villain due to his loneliness. And Officer Gordon visits John and tells him that he's done saving him and now he can just live his life. And in the hospital, Bill's son is escorted to the operating room because he was hit by a car. And Bill threatens the man that hit his son, and Laura is packing up her things to move to a new apartment, and when her son asks about his dad, she tells him that they're not gonna live with him anymore. And she visits him in prison, and she tells him that she's gonna wait for him no matter what, and that she'll do all she can to support him. And after getting back from the visit, he seeks help from John to help him do something so he can get back the 7 years that they took from him. He meets Bill and tells him that he will fight off the guy in cell 19, and with the help of his wife, he gets Gordon to witness. And after hitting the guy, all the prisoners stand in front of Bill as he gets ready to shoot them. And on the other way to the cell, one of the police calls John and Wade back into the yard. Bill tortures John and Wade in the yard, but DS shoots them. And with the help of the federal, Laura is informed that Wade is in private custody and will get out in less than 3 months after his testimony. And Gordon meets Wade in the infirmary, where they share the memories that they had of John, and finally getting out of prison, he meets with his family. And Wade reads us the final letter that he got from John, and his last words were, "Protect your family at all costs." And that's how our movie ends, boys and girls. I hope you guys enjoyed our recap. Remember to leave a like, leave a comment. I'll see you guys on the next recap. Bye.